Slagter. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I've been attending the peace movement involvement in the PPC planning meetings.
Great.
And so I'm going to send you by email some links to what the rest of the peace movement is planning to as a presence at the campaign, the rally, and teach-ins and things happening on the 19th.
Okay. Are you talking Code Pink or others?
All kinds of others. All kinds.
Okay.
Veterans
Great.
for Peace. I believe WILPF has already got its own arrangements, but I thought you would like to know what other people from the peace movement are going to be doing.
Absolutely.
I'm
Thanks.
going to mention some of the Code Pink stuff when I talk about DC.
Who's that?
It's Rowan. Sorry, Cheryl.
Rowan. Oh, good. No, I'm not looking at pictures. Good. I meant to mail it to Emily last night and I got stuck in doing something else.
Well, thanks for passing that on.
Yeah.
Yeah. We knew about the meetings, but we both had conflicts. But so I'm really glad somebody went. Thank you,
Yes,
Cheryl.
I've been going. I keep saying I'm not the official representative of WILPF, and we, so, but nevertheless.
Have you noticed that I've been there too, Cheryl?
And George, you've been there too, yes, on behalf of your organization, I believe. Anyway, so I think it's good. It's good that there's going to be lots of peace people there.
Okay, are we ready to start? Let's see. Well, we'll wait another minute or two. People tend to be late, just by a few minutes. Okay. We're still getting people showing up, so I'm admitting folks.
Why don't I close the waiting room?
Close. Oh, just let them show up automatically. Sounds good, Ellen. Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead, Mary Beth, and I'll get rid of the share screen here.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to our May 2022 WILPF Call. I'm Mary Beth Garden from Iowa City, Iowa, although I'm in Florida right now. Our technical support teammate is Ellen Thomas from the mountains of North Carolina. Tonight, I'll be sharing call facilitation with our two Poor People Campaign liaisons, Emily Keel from the Triangle branch in North Carolina and Rowan Fairchild of the San Jose branch in California. This Zoom meeting is sponsored by members of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom US section. It's a public call. We're video recording and the recording will be posted in just a few days to WILPF's YouTube channel and our WILPF Call page. Those links are in the chat or will be soon and on the text pad. WILPF is the oldest women's international peace organization in the world, founded in 1915 by Jane Addams of Hull House. There are over 30 branches in the United States and we're one of 50 sections around the world. You can find out more and join us at our website. I'm going to be putting that on the text pad and the chat as well. WILPF is a sisterhood, although we welcome male, queer, and trans members too. These WILPF Call connections to one another keep us strong across the United States. We're looking for volunteers to help and plan and facilitate future WILPF Call Zooms. Please contact me at mbgardem@gmail.com to find out more or volunteer. Please remain muted when you're not speaking to reduce background noise and we'll post the agenda in the chat, and it's already on the text pad. The Google Doc text pad, where you can add information under the red line, is on, I'm hoping Ellen has placed it into the chat. You're free to also enter your name and location in the chat, and we welcome you.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Emily Keel. Last November, WILPF US members on these calls began planning 2 solidarity actions for 2022. One of them is the mass action we can take together in just a little over a month from now to support the Poor People's Campaign, Moral March on Washington, D.C. and to the polls. On June 18th, this Poor People's and Low Wage Workers Assembly will gather in Washington, D.C. for a series of events scheduled that day. As a strong partner for the Peace PC, WILPF US has been steadily and loudly calling for mobilization among our members to travel to DC for the June 18th actions. On this call, we'll hear about some of the scheduled events on June 18th in Washington, the kinds of outreach being planned in various states, and some tips about preparing to be part of the June 18th actions, even if you can't be in Washington.
Rowan,
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself and it was being slow. Hi, I'm Rowan Fairchild. The partnership between the PPC and WILPF makes so much sense because the mission of both organizations includes a more peaceful, more economically just vision for the US. The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, is presenting a powerful moral budget and specific roadmap for how to achieve these goals. And on our march on June 18th, we'll present many facets of the campaign's pillars. Here's a short video about what we think the march will look like.
Ellen, make sure please that Rowan has permission to screen
she
share.
has permission, yes.
Okay, great.
Everyone on the call does.
Welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new, unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group.
It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There are still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience.
as we fight these interlocking injustices together.
When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third Reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.
Justice is coming soon. Hey, do you believe that on today?
And so here's what we know about the planned events scheduled in Washington for the 17th and 18th. On Friday the 17th, there will be a communal supper with unhoused neighbors, and that will be in Freedom Plaza. And then we'll go to the Lincoln Memorial for a candlelight memorial service to recognize the 1 million deaths due to COVID, and to recognize the deaths because of ongoing wars, and to recognize the deaths from the interlocking injustices in this nation. Afterward, Code Pink is holding a peace march to the White House. On Saturday the 18th, we'll begin with a morning Shabbat service in Freedom Plaza, I believe at 8 a.m. The main rally site will be at Pennsylvania Avenue and 3rd, with folks beginning to gather around 10 a.m. There'll be some seating and some tents for shade, but it will be a really long day. There'll be music while we gather and a call to action at 10:45. And after that, there'll be testimonies from impacted people across the country, and the rally will end between 2 and 3 p.m. Code Pink is offering a teach-in and a dinner on that Saturday. We don't have any better idea yet of where to meet up with fellow WILPF members beyond Pennsylvania Avenue and 3rd. We'll probably start a text thread with all attending to better coordinate our meetup. Bishop William J. Barber II and Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris say of this gathering, it is not just a day of action. It is a declaration of an ongoing, committed moral movement to 1, shift the moral narrative, 2, build power, and 3, make real policies to fully address poverty and low wealth from the bottom up. That WILPF is a part of this generationally transformative movement is inspiring, and I hope that we can inspire many of you to travel next month. Across the country, states are organizing to offer lots of different ways for people to engage with the PPC event. Here is Pat Aaron from Massachusetts PPC to describe what they're working on. Welcome, Pat.
You're on mute, Pat.
I'll eventually learn how to do this. Thank you. We're so excited in Massachusetts about June 18th. And we started talking about June 18th over a year ago before we even knew really what it was going to be. But in the fall, we really focused our attention on the march, starting with people we knew, and then we moved on to our partner organizations. The members of our coordinating committee represent dozens of different organizations, and we started with reaching out to them. An example is our work with the Mass Union of the Homeless. We joined in with their fall initiative with rallies, with a press conference, with a memorial service for unhoused people who have died, and handing out medical kits, including information on the Poor People's Campaign in June 18th. With Mass Peace Action, we lobbied at the State House, we gave presentations, we were involved with rallies, a tax day march, and everywhere we went, we talked about and gave out information about the March on Washington. Another example is one of the members of our coordinating committee was a member of an Episcopal congregation outside of Boston. She spoke to the congregation and people there started reaching out. So now there's a network of Episcopalians all across the state mobilizing for June 18th. Once we had reached out to groups that we knew, we identified the gaps of the types of groups and geographically, and started extending our presentations to more and more groups. One of the things that I've seen in this campaign that's different from other groups I've been involved with is it really is a statewide effort. There's a very strong campaign in Western Mass where, in addition to having a large city, there's a huge amount of rural poverty. We have handed out flyers at different community events. This week, we're at the Wake Up the Earth Festival and the Kite and Bike Festival in Boston. We have justice jams in parks and on street corners all across the state where we sing, we talk about June 18th. We are doing art bills in different communities where we make signs and banners and we teach people our songs. We've developed relationships with media, especially local media across the state, so that events in those areas are covered. And if someone is involved with a national event, like a woman in Western Mass was arrested at our December Women's March on Washington, and that got a lot of really good coverage in the western part of the state. The last thing I'll mention is that we're having monthly open houses on Zoom where people get a chance to meet us, to learn about our principles and what we're doing. And right there at the open house, they connect with working groups so they can immediately start working on mobilizing. So those are some of the things that we're working on in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for joining us tonight. I believe that we have also a representative from Pennsylvania for People's Campaign. Her name is Nijmi Jurenko. I hope I am saying that right. Please correct me if I am wrong. And if Nijmi is not here yet, we can call on her when she arrives. Are you here? I guess not. All right, well, we'll try and find her when she arrives. Okay, Rowan, I think you're up.
Yeah, so in California, we are getting ready for the West Coast Mobilization Tour stop in Los Angeles on May 16th, this coming Monday. We will be marching together and hearing directly from the co-chairs. The National Theomusicologists are coming out. We're really looking forward to that. And there'll be faith leaders and moral advocates from California, Arizona, Oregon, Utah, and Washington represented, and testifiers from those places. And also, we, like Massachusetts, we have a welcome session on the first Tuesday of every month. So if you're in California and want to know more about the campaign, there is a way to do that and get hooked up with our working groups. But in terms of the WILPF work with the Poor People's Campaign, many of our WILPF branches are working closely to do outreach for June 18th. And I wanted to share a video from the Des Moines branch. It's not too late to do your own individual or branch video in support of the PPC. So please enjoy this video from
We're going to do this inside or outside? We're going to do it outside. Go ahead and put your stuff. I'll put some of my stuff inside.
Just keep looking at me and I'm just like, this is going to be beautiful. Because you're all beautiful.
You're very kind.
You're very kind. Thank you.
No, I'm just honest.
WILPF is alive and well.
There we go. That's the... Hi, well, we're meeting tonight. We are the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Des Moines branch, and all of WILPF, our whole section is a partner in the Poor People's Campaign. We had people go to the June 20th, 2020 rally, and now we're getting ready for June 18th, 2020, and that's going to be our Moral March on Washington and to the polls. So we're looking forward to that.
Our democracy and our voting rights are under attack, and it wasn't that long ago that blacks got the opportunity to vote. It's in my lifetime that's happened, so it makes a difference, and I think we all have to fight. Our way of living and democracy is definitely at stake, and we're supposed to be the leaders.
While the U.S. economy grew 18-fold in past 50 years, wealth inequality expanded. Cost of living increased, and social programs continue to diminish. The poor are the victims and have no resources for adequate health care or protection or recovery from health crises or from extreme weather events.
The story is very personal and goes back 55 years to when Martin Luther King spoke his Beyond Vietnam speech at Riverside Church exactly 1 year before he was assassinated. I was in the audience that night and was extremely moved. King's voice was a voice in the wilderness, but he's also created an enormous legacy. What he did was bring intersectionality and fusion, which are components of the campaign today, into the picture with that Vietnam speech. Before that, it had been mostly race and poverty oriented, and he brought all the elements together. And fortunately, Dr. Barber, 50 years later, brought it together with today's Poor People's Campaign, added the environmental issue, and we're taking it forward from there. So this is a 50, 60-year journey that we're on, and it will go forward until. Us women getting together, mobilizing, if all of us get together and support the Poor People's Campaign, we can make a definite inroad regarding and have a voice for voting rights, which definitely supports poor people, all of us, not only poor people, but all of us, and our ideals, why America was born.
So aren't they amazing?
Yeah.
And great work doing outreach. So Emily, can you tell us how organizing in North Carolina is going?
Yes, I can try to do that. George, did you want to say something? You have your hand up.
Thanks, Emily, for noticing.
Sure.
So Rowan, you were speaking about the gathering place, and I know Cheryl was on at least one of these calls. I thought it was 3rd and Constitution. We've got time to clarify it. There's only a block difference between 3rd and Pennsylvania and 3rd and Constitution, but I did think it was 3rd and Constitution. And
we heard Pennsylvania.
Well, we both could have heard different things, but it's worth checking out and confirming. And every time I've heard from staff or Liz Theo Harris or Reverend Barber, they've really emphasized the importance of having impacted people and low wealth people there. So those of y'all who are doing organizing, I hope, especially if you've been working on it for months and months or a year or more, I hope that you build some connections to and relationships with low-income communities or organizations that work with and are led by low-income folks so that y'all can support them and resource them into getting there. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, George. Certainly an important point to make. And thank you, Rowan. I am not one of the organizing committee in the state, but I can report on some of the events that have taken place. Our organizing committee is meeting tonight, so no one representative could be here. It's in North Carolina where our WILPF branch has been supporting Reverend Barber since 2013 when he started his Moral Monday Actions. We're planning lots of outreach there, and many of us plan to be demonstrating on June 18th in DC. I think there's 7 or 8 WILPF members that are going. Our outreach includes the March 28th rally in the state capitol, where many of us gathered in person for the first time in 2+ years. We've done text banking, phoning to other people within the state to give them information and to engage them, reaching out to faith communities where buses often originate, speaking about the rally at other events like May Day. And, you know, it's possible if you have not signed up yet and you want to do that, you can do that right now on poorpeoplescampaign.org, June 18th. Register and sign up for a bus right there. We're going to hear more about the details of that. If you're planning to travel to DC and spend a night or two, I plan to create a group text, as Rowan mentioned earlier, so that we can keep in touch with all of us. If you're planning to attend and want to put your name in the chat, I will get up with you later for more information about the events and about travel. And I think that Diane is working on a meeting place for all of us to know in advance where to meet. So she's investigating that. Rowan, back to you. Rowan, are you there?
You're on mute, Rowan.
That's the famous muted.
Yes. Okay, well, I think lastly, the PPC website has vast amounts of information and resources to learn more about the event on June 18th and sign up to participate. Plus, you can access a variety of really valuable reports at that website that are great to share with families, friends, and allies. Sometimes it's hard to have these conversations, and those reports really give you a strong foundation to stand on when you're talking to people who aren't aware of these facts or maybe choose not to be aware of them. There's the pandemic report on the impact of the pandemic on people in poverty. The report on the impact of poor and low-income voters in the 2020 elections, the Power of Poor Voters report, and the Poor People's Campaign moral budget, as well as the Souls of Poor Folk audit, plus lots of fact sheets and art resources. You can find all of that at poorpeoplescampaign.org. You know, they say that if a tree falls in the forest and no one sees or hears it, it's as if it never existed. So if you're planning to be present on June 18th, it's important to make sure that you are visibly representing WILPF. If we are invisible, it's hard to be seen. It's hard for WILPF to be seen as being supportive by the PPC organizers and coordinators. It's important that WILPF is seen as making a commitment to the agenda that the PPC is promoting, because not being visible at these things is pretty much means that WILPF is silent. And we want to be loud and visually representing our strong partnership with the PPC. And besides that, it will be important for us to document our numbers. So please keep a record of how many people from your branch will go to Washington, or how many of them will host viewing parties in their homes, or just sign on and watch virtually that day. Just as importantly, if we're not seen as WILPF by the public at these demonstrations, we miss a huge opportunity to do outreach and recruit members who may never have heard of us till now, but they might be interested in joining the oldest international women's peace organization in the world. So bring along information about WILPF, your branch, and how to join. You can request WILPF brochures at info@wilpfus.org, but you need to order them soon, because you know how the mail is these days. So you need to get your request in. In Washington, and on the buses going to Washington, there will be lots of chants and slogans being echoed. and re-echoed at these demonstrations. So let's start one, wherever we are, that underscores WILPF's commitment to economic justice. Here's a couple that I like, but maybe you can come up with your own that features WILPF's name. Keep it short and be careful not to interfere with the planned speeches or presentations. But we could do WILPF says, change the system, listen to women for a change. Or we could say women's international league for peace and freedom stands with the Poor People's Campaign. WILPF lifts up the moral budget for peace and economic justice. Whatever chant you choose, practice it on the bus, type it out, copy it and bring extra copies for everyone, not just in WILPF, but in the immediate vicinity to join your chant. Repeat it as often as there's a break in the proceedings without interrupting the planned speeches. Wear your WILPF sashes and buttons. Emily, I think you have information about the kinds of resources available on our website to make our members more visible as WILPF in DC. And if we order them now, until they run out, we should have them in time for June 18th. What kind of wearable attention getters and signage can folks get hold of, Emily?
Well, we're offering buttons for free to any members and sending 5 just to every branch to share. But anyone may order additional buttons at no cost by contacting Linda Pearson. And I can try to put her email in the chat in a second. She's going to package and mail them to the branches. I think we're asking if people would order as a branch, and we'll send all the buttons to the branch. That might be simple. So contact her as soon as possible with your order of buttons. They are 2 1/4 inches, and they are, I'll show you the logo. Ellen, if you want to put the t-shirt visual in, the logo on the buttons is the same as on the t-shirts. So they're really nice and incorporate Women's International League as well as the Poor People's Campaign information. So contact Linda Pearson with your order for buttons. Our buttons will be mailed out within a week, I guess. Also, there are commemorative t-shirts, which are, like the buttons, have a combination WILPF and PPC logo on it. There are 2 colors, both with V-necks and short sleeves. Their colors are heather, charcoal, and royal blue heather. The sizes are small to 2X large, so small to 2X large. So please place an order using the link in the chat, which I will put in the chat. Or I believe I sent that to you, Ellen, if you could put that link in the chat. It's an order form. We can order additional t-shirts if needed, but there are only 4 dozen ordered. So you will need to place your order quickly in order to get one. Another little problem is the only medium size is in the charcoal heather. All of them are $20 with no postage in addition. So, and they will be sent to your home. So order quickly to get one before the June 18th event. And you can also order WILPF buttons at the wilpfus.org website, as well as banners that are WILPF PPC banners. So those are great things. I'm also working on some flags, hopefully, that will incorporate both logos. Yeah, there's a picture of the t-shirt. So the button has that very same logo on it. And buttons are free. The t-shirts are $20 a piece with no charge for shipping. And so working on some signs and flags maybe that will identify where we are better by being overhead and more easily seen by those of us who are trying to find everyone else.
I wanted to make sure everyone knows that these banners are also available. You can find them on the WILPF website on the resources page. And it's not too late to download them and get them to your local printer to have them make them up. I think it may be too late to get them from Vistaprint, but maybe not. You could try that. But you might be able to get banners from a Union printer, which would be even better. Yeah, and I noticed that our friend from Pennsylvania, Nizhmi Jurenko, I hope I'm saying that right, has joined us. Nizhmi, please unmute yourself and tell us about the organizing and outreach going on in Pennsylvania.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. I'm one of the tri-chairs of the Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign. I'm also on the National Steering Committee. You want me to talk about the outreach that's going on in Pennsylvania? That's what you're asking?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so we are mobilizing. We just had a major event. We had the MORE tour stop, the mobilizing, organizing, registering, and educating stop on the 25th of April in Philadelphia. There were several hundred people there. I know there were some people from WILPF in attendance. That was a big moment to support the mobilizing that we're doing. We also have many rally bus points throughout the state, and we are organizing through a lot of organizations. We've been talking to 50 to 100 different organizations. We have all of the organizations on the coordinating committee that are mobilizing our members, all directly impacted folks around different fronts of struggle like immigration, mass incarceration, healthcare, voting rights, welfare rights. So all those organizations are mobilizing. We've been doing street outreach, connecting with people, flyering. We have mobilizing partners. So WILPF may be a mobilizing partner. If so, that's fantastic. We've been signing up a lot of different mobilizing partners. And on the June 18th website, hopefully everyone has seen that, but of course I'll put that in the chat. There's a lot of great resources there. There's an organizing manual. There's a link to sign up as a mobilizing partner. There's a link to sign up as a bus captain. There's all the information about rally. So there's a lot of great things there as well.
Okay, great. Those are wonderful ways to be reaching out. So many of the states are doing this, and we're so grateful for the PPC's outreach and expertise. Thank you for joining us. And please tell me, how do you say your name?
Yeah, Nizhmi, you got it the first time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, now, Emily, you're on. You're going to facilitate a stack for people.
Okay, how about we hear from everyone on the call about how you're planning to support the June 18th action? Could you just put STACK in capital letters into the chat, and we'll call on you. Tell us what you're doing. Are you going to DC? Are you planning to host or attend a COVID safe house party to watch the events in Washington on your own computer, or to attend in someone else's home? Do you have questions about how to engage? Are you going to watch on your computer yourself and add to the number of virtual views of the action by saying that you're from WILPF? That would be a great thing to do to represent us. And I'll put in the chat here the places to watch, which are on that day. If you want to watch the live stream, it would be facebook.com/a-new-ppc/a-new-ppc. Or if you don't want to use Facebook, then go to poorpeoplescampaign.org/June 18th. Also, following the campaign on Twitter is a good idea for right now even. And that is twitter.com/unitethepoor. #UniteThePoor will get you to the campaign's Twitter. And I think a great thing there is to just retweet every one of their tweets. Would be a good idea to just support that and increase the number of viewers. So I'll put those couple of sites in the chat, hopefully.
Okay, I see Tina's hand is up. Tina, and then Teresa. Go ahead, Tina.
Hi. Nijmi didn't say what a joyful experience the rally on the 25th was. The music, the speakers. It was such a beautiful, I just left there with my heart lifted. It was just, it was so much fun to be there, and we're getting excited. We will have some people that are going to be watching from home in Philadelphia. We're wondering if they should be getting together or just getting together in their home. We're kind of talking about it, and we're scouting out some sites where rally is, the rally buses. The rally bus looks like it's such a super organized way to go. I'm still trying to explore all of the resources and figuring everything out, but it looks like it's super well organized. I like the way that Rally is supporting, is partnering with the Poor People Campaign to make it as easy as possible.
What is Rally?
Rally is the bus company that's organizing all the buses. And
oh, neat.
It's a ride share app. So
I
it makes it simple, and they have.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, right. It's the guy who owns it just created a ride share app and organized it. So it's kind of really neat. Did we point out too that people can get, if anybody knows of lower income people or people in need, they can get a voucher to ride the bus for nothing, which is very helpful. And Mary Beth, if I could take a second too. Or Rowan, do you want to talk about the scholarship money? Do you know about the scholarship money?
For WILPF?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of money, not much, but it might help with some walking around. I just put the information in the chat. And Jan Quarterman and Judy Adams are kindly figuring out what folks need. But I wanted to say that the rally bus thing they have for another week and a half, anybody, not just poor and low income people, but anybody who wants to get on the bus, the campaign is paying for it. So if you sign up, you can certainly do that. And so WILPF does not have a lot of money for this. I'm from California. Our campaign is raising $450,000 to send low income people to DC because that's how expensive it is to send people from California. So your local campaign may also have scholarships if you are poor and low income. But just for sort of walking around money, if you need a little bit of help, please ask Jan and Judy and they will do what they can.
Okay, and then Teresa, you said stack. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm really hesitant to turn on the camera. It's not my best day here. But the Southern Anti-Racism Network, which is a fiscal sponsor for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, we've been working with Reverend Barber since 2006. And this new Poor People's Campaign is like how things have developed over these many years. But as a long time organizer, I really have issues with going to DC on a Saturday when there are no congressional reps working. And it is a great opportunity for able-bodied people to stand up and say how strongly we're united. But I am not an able-bodied person. So my marching days have been over for many years. And I cannot stand out in the hot sun. I have a skin disorder, so I will not be on the mall. However, I am using the weekend because it's Juneteenth weekend. I'm using the weekend to reestablish the DC branch of WILPF so that we will actually have a branch in the nation's capital that can do some of the work that needs to be done in the capital when the time comes. Because for me, strategically, we have to begin to do something more than mobilize. And I did say that to the Georgia Poor People's Campaign. It will be over 15 hours on a bus ride from Columbus, Georgia to DC. It requires an overnight hotel stay. The Georgia Poor People's Campaign is not well organized. So it's impossible for me to ask poor people, I mean, really, really poor people and their children to get on a bus to ride for 15 hours to show up in DC and expect to stand out in the hot sun for hours. I'm not gonna do that, because for me, it's what we do when we come back from June 18th. Because in order to end poverty, particularly child poverty, we have to have a strategic plan. And I really am concerned that the Poor People's Campaign, state by state, does not have this kind of plan that links us all together to really go after the US Congress for putting all that money into war and not putting money into ending poverty. That's what WILPF should be saying out loud in solidarity in the campaign. We should be saying what we are really for. We're for money for social needs and not for war. And that's the message that WILPF should be taking to DC as an organization. And to be in solidarity does not mean charity. It means that we have an interest in this fight. And our interest as WILPF is to make sure this military spending ends. $40 billion, not just the 33 that we were talking about on Sunday, but it turns out to be 40 billion more for a war that is devastating women and children. That is gonna be another Afghanistan. WILPF has to find its voice inside of the Poor People's Campaign so that Reverend Barber is real clear that we stand against military spending, and he should say that clearly. He's being attacked in a lot of quarters for not saying it clearly. And that's what's going on. And WILPF has to make a decision about how our voice will be heard inside of the Poor People's Campaign so that we really make the kind of difference. There is more than enough money to end poverty if it wasn't being spent on weapons and war. And that's what WILPF has to say. And I'm disappointed that WILPF is not saying it. It's just going along to show up to be a part of something without putting our voice out there clearly about what we are for.
Well, I think
I'm very concerned about it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Teresa. Did you finish?
Well, I don't want to just be talking without a response. I'd like to hear from Emily what she thinks about what I just said, since she's our primary liaison to the Poor People's Campaign.
Well, and I just want to say too that Cheryl is going to be talking in a little while too about how WILPFers can have more of a voice. But go ahead, Emily.
Well, I totally agree. I think that we should consider letting our voices be heard more about this. Definitely. And Code Pink is certainly organizing things to do, and we should be fully supporting what they're doing and also leading our own anti-war action. I think I'm totally aboard that with that, and would like to hear what other people have to say. And Cheryl's going to give us some of the horrifying numbers, I think. So definitely I'm for taking some action. Thank you, Teresa, for bringing that up in such a powerful way.
Okay, anyone else to respond to Teresa? I see Cheryl has her hand up. Go ahead, Cheryl. And then I saw Diane Blay had her was on the stack. We'll be getting to you too, Diane. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yes, I was originally just going to say that I will be watching the live stream from home in California of the march, the rally, and the speeches, and I'm hoping that some of our branch will, maybe we'll get together in one house to do that, and to say that indeed for a long time we've been touting the Poor People's Campaign's moral budget, and when you get to see my presentation shortly, you will see a link to our guide number 9 in the Call for Peace campaign last year, where we gave all the details of how much money you can take from the military budget and what it could provide on the civilian side of life. So trying to get, so my impression is the Poor People's Campaign is already very much thinking along those lines, and it's up to us to get to our congressional representatives and to present them with our opinion on that, because they're the ones who appropriate the funds, and so there's the ones we have to get to. You'll see more about that in my presentation shortly. Thank you.
I think WILPF used to have the habit of going to Washington and meeting with members of Congress and making its opinions very well known, and we haven't done that a lot since Carol Erner retired. Maybe we need to schedule a trip like that and get our president or our disarm chair or Robin Lloyd or someone to go, and I bet Teresa would have a lot to say if she went as well. So let's think about that. And Robin, speaking of Robin, we'll get to you in a minute, but first we wanted to hear from Diane Blay, who has had her name on the stack for a while.
Well, I just wanted to say that the board is trying to have a board meeting. We haven't actually, lots of us haven't even met in person ever. So we were hoping to have a board retreat that weekend to fit in with the PPC. And then I was going to have a luncheon, or I am having a luncheon. I am having it at my house for everyone available on Sunday, the day after the rally. So just keep that in mind if you can come.
Okay, maybe that luncheon is a good place to plan next steps. Robin, you have your hand up, and then Nancy Price.
Yeah. So I'm totally in agreement with Teresa. I was disturbed with the different statements that came out that said Reverend Barber was not clear on his stand on the Ukraine. And of course, this has all been pushed to the head in the sense of the Democrats in the House unanimously voting for $40 billion of weapons and other things. Maybe it's only $20 billion are going for weapons to Ukraine. And I'm hoping that the Reverend will come out soon and sharply in opposition to this. I called Bernie Sanders' office today because the House has voted, but the Senate hasn't, as far as I understand it. And the person who answered the phone indicated that he is concerned about the lack of money going to human needs here at home. So we need as WILPF to make a clear voice to Reverend Barber and everyone at the Poor People's Campaign in opposition to this war in the Ukraine. It's become an avalanche of warmongering. And I'm just, in other words, we got out of the failure of a war in Afghanistan. And here we are 8 months later, jumping into this thing. And so many people, so many politicians seem to be supporting it, and my friends of mine. And I'm in a very upset state these days, as I think many of you are. Anyway, thank you.
And then Nancy, you're next.
Thank you. So there's often the focus of not just calling Congress, but going and being able to lobby and whatnot. And don't forget, Congress members, representatives, and senators come back to the district. And so the best thing is to call early, make an appointment, take a group of people with you, and then lobby your representative right there somewhere close where you live, because they've got district offices. I have done that a number of times with John Garamendi, who's my representative, and he is on the Armed Services Committee. And so I just want to offer that as a really viable alternative. And you can take materials and hand them to them, and not let the chief of staff or somebody else sort of divert you from talking to the real person. So, and you can find the calendar, the schedule. Maybe we need to make a link to that, and so everybody will know how you find the calendar and the district, the times when they go back to their district.
George has her hand up, I think.
Hey, George, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. This will not take long, but Robin, I want to share with you part of an email written by Reverend Barber that was sent on Tuesday. In my update last week, I noted the moral contradiction of a Congress that can find money for more weapons to fight Russians in Ukraine, but will still not invest in poor and low-income people here at home. Some people have misconstrued my words as an endorsement of a continued military escalation in Ukraine. I want to be clear, nothing could be further from the truth. We need to do everything possible to get negotiated peace, not the death of more people. We also have to do even more on the front end before war ever starts. All this death, killing one another, and blowing up cities will lead the human race to its own demise.
Wow,
I
thank
just
you.
wanted to share that. Yeah, it's, I don't know how widely it was shared, but it was shared around people I know.
Great, thank you.
One other thing, Code Pink. Well, okay, so there were 2 meetings with Reverend Barber and Liz Theo Harris this week, and one of them, he told a story, and someone else who was on these may remember better than I, about going to Fort Bragg to lay a memorial at one of the buildings at Fort Bragg. And there were, of course, a lot of protesters who didn't like him being there, mostly scary looking white guys. That's not the language he used, that's my language. And he said suddenly he was surrounded by all these pink shirts. And he looked around and said, "Who are you?" And they said, "We're your security." And they were mostly white women in pink shirts, which if somebody's gonna be yeah, there you go. I hear you, Nancy Price, that's it.
I think Rowan is going to introduce Cheryl now. I don't see any more hands up or comments.
Nancy has her hand up again. Nancy has her hand up again.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy. I didn't see you.
Well, I just wanted to say that one of the actions and maybe educations we need and actions is to popularize the No to NATO movement. There's a huge movement building against NATO. It's called No to NATO. They meet at a peace summit in Madrid, June 12, I believe it is, at the same time that NATO has their annual meeting. And so that would be some focus that we could call attention to our members.
Yeah, that's in July, is it not?
No, June.
It's June.
Okay, well, yeah, I think people do not understand that NATO has devolved into an arms promoter. They they constantly hype new weapon systems and insist that their nations are constantly, it's the equivalent of buying a new car every year. You have to have the latest weapon. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I don't want to carry on here and take Cheryl's time, but if we were to direct our members to read the NATO 2030 planning document, we all would just be totally shocked. And also, NATO now has a youth group. So that's the direction that NATO is going. I will cease and desist.
Yes, thank you. Those people, attending the disarm committee meetings have received some of this information.
Okay.
And so the question is, how to get it to the rest of WILPF.
Well, while you're there, Cheryl, why don't you begin your presentation, and maybe you'll answer some of the questions that were raised.
I see Robin's hand up again.
Okay. Can I jump in just for a second? And that Nancy was mentioning June 12th, and June 12th is the 40th anniversary of the massive march in New York City for disarmament that went from the United Nations to Central Park. And I was there, my son was there, my parents were there, my partner was there. Anyway, there's going to be like 4 hours of remembrance and empowerment of the new anti-nuclear movement happening on June 12th. So watch out for that, and let's all get together and sing Kumbaya together.
That's a virtual event.
Yeah.
That I certainly have seen the thing. So Ellen, please, would you share the screen and your screen and show my PowerPoint?
Hey, Kitty, how are you? Oops.
Are you there, Ellen? Yes, thank you. Okay, so I was asked to compare the Poor People's Campaign's moral budget and the war budget, and also to talk about what you can be doing to influence the war budget. Next slide, please. You go to the next slide, thank you. So it's helpful to review what actually the federal budget process is, and this thing called the National Defense Authorization Act and where it fits in. So this is a cartoon of the process, and the part we've reached is the Biden has issued his request for fiscal year 2023. And in that request, he has asked for $813 billion for defense, as it's called. So now that request is being considered by the Armed Services Committees of the House and the Senate. And the interesting thing is the defense spending has to be authorized every year. Okay, so there's authorization and there's appropriation. Authorization is its own bill that becomes an act if it gets passed. And that is where these committees set the upper limit on how much they think should be spent on so-called defense spending. And they also issue some policy requirements in that. So that then, that authorize the other, like Social Security doesn't have an authorization bill every year, that defense has to be authorized. And eventually the Armed Services Committees get together and they produce 12 bills, because there are 12 different sections of government that need to be provided money, our taxpayers' money. So remember, all your money is going to all these 12 bills that will eventually be sent to the president to sign. So the NDAA, as it is called, is actually being discussed in the next 3 weeks. Please, the next slide. So this is actually for last year's NDAA, because we haven't seen this year's yet. But on the left column is what the Build Back Better Act asked for. And on the right is what last year's NDAA Act asked for. And it's just a huge difference toward between the two approaches to budgeting for Americans' lives. And you can read yourselves the kind of things that happen. The proliferation of nuclear weapons comes out of the NDAA. We have the Pentagon producing fossil fuel emissions, contaminating drinking water. We are the organizations like Lockheed Martin make an enormous amount of money out of producing the weapons that the government buys from them. Whereas what the Build Better Act did was to make healthcare and childcare and housing more affordable and try to create good jobs. And so in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the Armed Services Committees are actually discussing the NDAA. So this is the time to contact your congressional reps, even if they're not on these committees, to say, you don't want so much money spent on the war economy. Next slide, please. We did this last year. We tried to encourage you to be talking to your congressional reps in this period of the NDAA discussions. Here's a couple of examples about how money taken from the war budget could be spent on civilian items. This data comes from the National Priorities Organization, who are very good at analyzing the defense budget coming out of the government. So for example, the military bases just in Germany cost $7.5 billion, I believe, a year. And if you were trying to get some hearing benefits out of Medicare, they would cost $3.5 billion per year under the Build Back Better Act. So that's an interesting thought to make. And then, of course, we've got this F-35 airplane that doesn't seem to work very well. And $12 billion is being spent on that. Whereas if we wanted a better immigration system, it would cost $10 billion a year under the Build Back Better Act. So last year, in our Call for Peace campaign, we had resource guide number 9. And that is a 2-page document that you can reach through that URL at the bottom, and maybe Ellen could copy and paste that URL into the chat of this meeting, where it specifically shows how you could take $350 billion out of the defense budget and use it on civilian needs that will help poor people and the rest of us. So we already have been talking about this, as I say, for over a year. Next slide, please. And just the latest update on this $40 billion that was trying to go through Congress today. And I read about this. This happened about 3 or 4 hours ago. Biden asked them to provide He asked for 30 billion. They managed to up it to 40 billion. And Senator Rand Paul today, Republican senator from Kentucky, objected to what he called the gift to Ukraine and blocked this vote that the Senate needed to vote on. And he said the package needs a watchdog to oversee the disbursement of the funds. It's been suggested that, you know, if nobody's looking at where they go, they're going to end up in the wrong place, in terrorist organizations, that waste will happen, and so on and so forth. So there's a hiatus right now on this $40 billion. And this would be the time to, again, tell your congressional reps you object to any further weapons and military aid being sent to Ukraine. This is WILPF US's official position, as discussed in the Disarm Committee. We are against more aid being sent to Ukraine. We want diplomatic methods to be used, ceasefire to happen, and so on and so forth, which is described in the URL I sent you on the that was in e-news, and an e-alert was sent in the last few weeks. So that's kind of a comparison of what the Poor People's Campaign call their moral bit out. Congress is likely to allow, which is, and they, after the NDAA is passed, then the appropriation bills will happen. And that's where the money actually gets appropriated. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Cheryl. I saw George's hand up briefly, and now it's down. Did you want to say something, George?
I did. And Cheryl, you reminded me of it by talking about what's happened recently with Ukraine, and that is the push that we should have is get to the negotiation table now. Go to the negotiation table, nothing else, no more money, negotiate. And on our UFPJ call yesterday, and I didn't remember this until you were talking, Cheryl, but one of the people on the CC said he thought the best outcome we might have is what happened with Korea. And I don't know those details really well. He said it wasn't an end of the war or a declaration of peace. It was a mutual, we're going to leave each other alone and leave it how it is. So nobody won, but nobody really lost. And there have been violence over the years, but for the most part, it's held on. And so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah,
also, before we're done, Mary Beth, I have an announcement to make before this call ends. That's all.
Okay. Teresa, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes. The one thing that we have to come to grips with is having a clear power analysis of how weak the anti-war movement is now. In 2002, when we had one of the biggest mass demonstrations in October of that year in an attempt to stop the war against Iraq that really went ahead in 2003. And what I'm hoping Cheryl and others who are leaders in the Disarm in Wars will understand that you can't just keep talking and meeting with people who are clearly never gonna be with us when it comes to not spending money on weapons. We have got to turn out people by the millions. As a person who worked in a movement 60, 50 years ago, it is as bad and as backward as it was in the 60s when it comes to where we are in our strength as a movement for justice. And WILPF is a venerable 107-year-old organization, but the reality is that WILPF and its branches are very weak. So part of what I'm committed to doing is strengthening the branches. It is not a sprint. It is going to take years for us to take down NATO. It's going to take years. And we have to have that level of strategic outlook and commitment. And that's what concerns me about WILPF, with all of its history and all that has been learned over these 100 years. We know that we've got to be bigger and stronger, and we've got to work with Code Pink, and we've got to do everything we can to bring all of the elements of the anti-war movement together. And I get on George about this a lot because she's in that UFPJ coalition. And we've got to make it clear that we see that NATO is a recipe for endless war, and we've got to say it. I can talk to my congressman till I'm blue in the face, but I know where he stands. He will vote for the war machine all day long. Unless we have a bunch of people that are saying, look, you're not going to keep getting elected if you keep voting for the war machine. That is the leverage that we have with people that we elect. They've got to see that there's a price to pay if they keep voting for war. And we're too weak to do that right now. So we need a plan that takes us beyond June 18th and beyond this year. And I just am so concerned because I'll probably be dead before it all happens. But we've got to do better with our voices and our strategic planning so that all of the branches, such as they are on board with what we are saying, so that whether it's Tucson, Arizona, or wherever there's a branch, that people are speaking out clearly. We're doing it in Fannie Lou Hamer, in Columbus. And I just think that it just really needs a strong leadership from the national board to say all of the branches, everybody be out there and do the work. That's what I have a problem with, having meetings that last for hours, and there's never any real action plan that's going to put the thousands and tens of thousands of people in the street. That's the only thing that's going to stop this endless war. We've got to put the people in the streets.
I see Cheryl wants to do a quick response, and then I think we should move on. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yes, I mean, I am attending quite a few planning meetings for various coalitions of peace organizations, and they're very much aware of the need for a more visible peace movement. It's one reason they're trying to make an effort to show up and be part of the Poor People's Rally on the 18th of June. And there are people like World Beyond War, Veterans for Peace, Peace Action, MAPA, 8 or 9 or 10 different organizations who are trying to work on this, trying to do what Teresa is saying we should be doing, which is being more visible. And a lot of them have the advantage of having paid staff whose work it is to work on these kind of things. We don't have any paid staff who work on setting up websites, producing materials, getting people riled up, and so that is, I think part of the reason that WILPF maybe isn't as visible and strong as it used to be. I believe we did used to have some paid staff who would do that. Anyway, so I'm amazed at how many pink people I have met in various coalitions who are all paid staff. I think they must have at least 10 of them. So that's one reason Code Pink can do as much as it does. And we use some of their materials and so on and so forth. So that's what I have to say. And I think maybe we should just go on to the next part of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, this is a conversation that needs to go on, but I don't think we're going to settle anything tonight. I wanted to talk briefly about where the money for these wars come from. The Women, Money, and Democracy Committee works on economic justice issues and looks at issues of how this kind of irresponsible knee-jerk allocation of public funds just raises the wealth and the power of the military-industrial complex, the stock shares, and the power of lobbyists who work for Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all of the companies that we know about. And the way that the debt of these allocations will contribute to the reasons why we'll be told that all of the environmental and human needs we demand will have to be put on hold for even longer. It's reprehensible. And let me just take a couple of minutes to explain how our committee is looking at this. From the time of the Trojan War, and probably before that, lending is the way wars are financed. And 97% of all currency in the United States is created by private for-profit banks, not by the governments, as the way we always thought. 97% of all of our money is debt money. That means it's created out of thin air whenever somebody borrows money, either through a formal loan or they use a credit card. Let me repeat that because it's complicated to understand. Debt money is now 97% of the currency in circulation. With a mere keystroke from some bank somewhere creates a bit of debt or currency whenever we borrow or use credit. So debt money drove the slave trade, the genocide of indigenous people, and the continuing colonization of the world. That's why our committee looks so closely at money, currency, monetary reform, and debt as it fuels war in modern times. The lending bank, usually a powerful Wall Street bank, chooses what projects to fund based on profitability, low risk, and how the project complements their other investments, but mostly on profitability. So wherever they can, they seek the most profits with the least risk. And guess what? Funding war and weapons is a no-brainer. It's endless war is good business with a reliable return, and it has become the underpinning element in our economy, even though Martin Luther King Jr. said that a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. So greed and economic inevitability pushes these kinds of investments, and their profitability funds lobbyists who create an endless cycle of investment of public money and profit into more investment in endless war. So you might want to take a look at how much of your own investments and retirement funds are invested in corporations that manufacture and sell weapons. It may not be completely obvious, but it's worth talking to your financial advisor about it. Many of those products, many more responsible investment products can be return just as much in earnings for you. Thanks to, and also the big bank investments in endless war is one reason why our committee is pushing for peace activists to become advocates for public banking. On May 20th, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Philadelphia Councilman Derek Green will speak at our Public Banking Learning Circle on how public banking benefits people in poverty and communities of color who are struggling for services and mutual aid and helps them gain equity. Public banking keeps local public money invested locally. It denies it to go to those big Wall Street banks that take those investments of our public money and use it to invest in war and weapons. So what do we mean by public money? So public money is all the income that a city or state realizes from property taxes, sales taxes, court costs, fees or licenses, traffic and parking tickets, and even the municipal and state employee pension fund investments. So this is, public banks are not meant for ordinary people to keep their savings and checking in. They're for states and cities. And when we put that money into a public bank, we deny Wall Street billions of dollars in money that they hold for cities and states, and millions more that they charge for service fees to manage and hold those public funds. So how much are we talking about? Well, in 1 year, the state of Arizona in 2014 paid over $300,000 in interest alone on the public money a big bank held for them. Public banking can cut down or eliminate those kinds of charges. So imagine if we instead had $300,000 per state every year to invest in causes that we care about instead of sending it off for extractive industries or war. So you can register now for our May 20th Public Banking Learning Circle. And I hope that you'll help us spread the word. I'll put the Zoom link in the chat and the text pad. And I think that this is another way of looking at how we defund war. It's not going to be as compelling as, you know, gathering millions of people in the streets, but I think it might be just as effective long-term. Cheryl, did you have an announcement to make for the Disarm Committee?
Yes, I put in the Google Doc, I put a couple of things. To remind people that because the war in Ukraine is still going on, we still need to be doing the actions that we asked you all to do in the e-alert of the 3rd of May, in the e-news of the 6th of May. And if you will go to that, if you go to the Google Doc, I've given you the one of the links to a set of other links to, like, letters to the editor about the Ukraine war, to write to say, you know, you don't think sending more weapons is going to help. You want negotiations to take place. Also, Ellen Thomas reminds us that we are still taking petitions. We're still getting people to sign the petitions to ask our president and senators to consider ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Those two, she's put links into the chat, well, excuse me, into the Google Doc. I hope you all know how to get to that Google Doc. It really is helpful to have that open. And so, yes, Lenny, it needs to be put again. Maybe Ellen will put it again, or somebody into the chat. I also, Lenny, on seeing that Cindy wasn't going to be able to be here, I noted that on May the 17th, Code Pink Call Congress is actually going to have a report back on Code Pink's recent trip to Cuba, where led by Medea with 4 other people from 4 other organizations, went to Cuba and learned for the May Day celebrations. They said 1 million people in the streets was a great event. So that is also in the chat. For those of you, these Code Pink Call Congress, every other Tuesday, they have knowledgeable speakers on a topic. And then at the end, they give you a link where you just have to put in your zip code and it knows who your congressional rep is. They give you a ready-made email to send to your rep on that topic, which you can edit. I always edit mine. There is one on coming up May 17th, specifically on Cuba and sanctions, why sanctions against Cuba are so bad and need to be gotten rid of. So that's those announcements. Thank you.
I see Ellen has her hand up, Ellen Moss.
Sorry, I'm very pleased to be here and to hear these wonderful reports, keeping me up to date. We're going to have a letter writing group on Saturday so that we will be able to write those letters, and we continue to do that here in Boston. And then, let's see, I'm going out next week with one of the members, and we're going to flyer the supermarket. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to use the WILPF flyer. We're supposed to go today, but we're postponing it till next week. The other thing I was going to say is kind of odd. I was very taken with Victory Day, the Mondays, the 9th, in not the giant military parade in Moscow, but certainly around the world. Tens of thousands of people were carrying their loved ones who had died in the great, what they call the Great Patriotic War. We call it was World War II. I know that we have our Armistice Day, November 11th, but this was, I thought it may have been an opportunity. And very tragically, the US called off their regular, their getting together. They usually get together, the US and Russia, over on the 9th, the Great Patriotic War Victory Day. But it was amazing. The cities, even in the east of Ukraine, were in great marches there. I think that we don't know a lot of what's going on. So I guess I'm encouraging people to please read alternative news if you can find it. Keep combing the YouTubes. Even go on the translation with different languages, particularly Russian language, and just know what they're saying. Because if we don't know what the other side thinks and is doing, and we can do it, I think, as well as a lot of the policy analysts that were being pushed down our throats, we can also do it ourselves quite easily if you go to the little translation knob at the bottom and just keep clicking translation, no, what is it, subtitles. So that's it. I'm looking forward to continuing on with the work, and I hope we didn't miss an opportunity on Monday to show that we really understand what we went through with World War II and defeat of fascism. So
okay, thank you. I see your hand up, Teresa, but there are two other people with their hands up who have not spoken yet. So I'm going to ask them to be very brief, and then I'll ask you to be very brief too, Teresa. Darian, you're first, and then Lenny, and then Teresa. So Darian,
I thought I was on the script. Sorry, I'm making Cindy's announcement, or at least trying to.
Okay, I thank you for reminding me about that. Can I let Darian speak first, and then you, Lenny?
Absolutely.
I'll be very brief. I just wanted to remind everyone that the deadline to apply to be the U.S. liaison to the Americas representative, in other words, international WILPF stuff, is coming up this weekend. And I have put the information on the Google Doc, namely contact me if you want to get the application. Also, we have delegates now for the International Congress. I didn't hear that.
I asked Janet Slagter to be on this call to make that announcement, Darian.
Okay, but I don't think she did. So,
Yeah, she's
Well,
here.
she's here, but we haven't called on her yet.
Right.
oh, okay, I thought we were winding down. So that's on the Google Doc now. But great. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, and now Teresa, go ahead.
Wait,
Briefly.
Lenny was next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lenny, you're right. Go ahead, Lenny.
Yeah, hi. I'm making Cindy Dominguez's announcement. She's at a meeting of Filipino workers. This is my second of 3 meetings today. Excuse me for being a little impatient. The election in the Philippines, I'm sure some of you remember seeing Leni Robledo, who came and spoke to us, who was the candidate for president. The election in the Philippines went very badly. The son of the dictator, Ferdinand Marcos, was elected president. The daughter of Duterte was elected vice president. So this is a probable 12-year sequence of right-wing, militaristic, misogynistic, extrajudicial killings type government in the Philippines. And obviously for Filipino activists for peace and justice, this both in the Philippines and in other countries. This is very devastating news. Having said that, I
are you out of food?
hesitate to do the quick Cuba and the Bolivarian Alliance Committee announcement, but we are sponsoring an online film festival which will take place on every Sunday night in October. It's Cuban women of the African diaspora. It includes poets, writers, playwright. US WILPF is a sponsor for this, as is, of course, the Cuba and the Bolivarian Alliance Committee. We would like to ask your branches to also co-sponsor. And what we mean by co-sponsorship is simply help get the word out. We're not asking you for money, though we are going to be asking WILPF for money via a mini grant. So if your branch is willing to vote to co-sponsor this, please let me or Cindy know. And again, all we're asking you is to help publicize as co-sponsors. Thank you very much. And contact me or Cindy, especially me. Cindy's pretty busy right now and pretty devastated. Contact me for details. I'll put my email in the chat, although many of you have it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lenny. And okay, Teresa, go ahead.
Well, Mary Beth, I just want to ask to be on the June 9th agenda to give an update on the DC restart of the DC branch event, which will be June 17th in DC, and also to give an update on the Join WILPF Today brochure being translated into Spanish, which Lenny and Adrian are working on. So those are 2 items. It may be Lenny or Adrian giving the update on the Spanish translation of the Join WILPF Today brochure, but I will give the update on the restart of the DC branch and the event that's taking place in DC on June 17th. So if you could put me on the agenda for June 9th.
I will try and do that, but I ask you please to remind me closer to that time, because okay. I don't always remember every detail. And I know all of us will be anxious to hear your report about the DC branch.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another report from Nancy Price, and then we're going to call on Janet Slagter to talk about international. I know Virginia Pratt wanted some information about international, and Janet's going to give it to you. But first, Nancy, go ahead.
Yes, very quickly. Well, in anticipation of Janet's talking about international, I just wanted to say that the International Congress, virtual Congress, will be on July 16 to 24. And the Earth Democracy Committee has submitted 2 proposals. We have not yet heard if they've been accepted, and I hope they will be at least that we'll hear in a week or so. But the first proposal, which comes from Earth Democracy, is to be a presentation of a PowerPoint by Cindy Feaster, who is on our Earth Democracy coordinating group. It's going to be on fighting the militarism of extinction and annihilation, which is combining the issue of the military's carbon bootprint and climate justice. And the discussion will be about how to, at COP27, which is being held in the late fall in Egypt, to demand that the military is mandated to report their emissions in the nationally determined contributions and to the UN Climate Committee. And we expect to be collaborating with different sections in this panel. And then we have a second panel submitted by Earth Democracy by Pat Hines from the Trap Rock Center for Peace and Justice in Western Massachusetts. It's titled, "Can Sanctions Ever Be Just, Let Alone Effective? A Feminist Perspective." So then the Environmental Working Group of International is also submitting a proposal that will be finalized and discussed on the upcoming Environmental Working Group call this coming Monday. So keep your fingers crossed that one or both of these proposals are accepted, and we'll keep you posted. I think perhaps in the June e-news, we might be able to announce something or other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. We did ask Janet Slagter to be on the call and talk a little bit about the delegates who have been chosen and the alternates who've been chosen from our US section to go to the International Congress, and how to register, what's planned, and so much more. Go ahead, Janet.
Okay, nice to see everybody and hear everybody. As has already been stated, the dates of the Congress are July 16th through the 24th. But for us in the US, at least for some of us, it will actually start the evening of the 15th. Because the first session is at a time in Australia. Australia is the section that's hosting the Congress this time. And their session will be in the morning their time, or actually in the afternoon their time, which is late evening our time, 9 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. Now that means it's going to be midnight in the Eastern Time Zone, and it won't be the only session the first day where that's the case. And to say it more clearly, the first day won't be the only time that one of the sessions is going to be scheduled at midnight, and some of the other sessions are also scheduled at 5 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So nobody's getting off really easily here. Congress theme is making connections, environment, social justice, and demilitarization for feminist peace. The deadline for submitting proposals was May 1st. I have not yet seen an update on how many have been submitted, but the committee is going through them. I do know that. So the plan is there are going to be 2 sessions per day, most days. I have seen a tentative schedule that has 3 sessions per day on a couple of days, but the schedule is not quite finalized yet. For one thing, they're not sure how many presentations there are going to be from sections and working groups. The length of the sessions is generally going to be about 2 hours. What kinds of sessions will there be? Well, there will be panel discussions, maybe some performances, guest or member speakers, interchanges between sections on different topics, question and answer sessions, etc. I asked at our last international board meeting, will sessions be scheduled against each other? And that's a definite possibility, depending on how many applications there are, how many proposals there are to do sessions. Let's see. Nancy already talked about 2 of the proposals that the US section, various people in the US section has submitted. There's also another one. I know that Robin and Eileen Kurkowski are involved in this, on having a dialogue about AFRICOM, you know, the US colonialist project in Africa. And Burkina Faso will be involved in that dialogue as well. Also, Teresa and George are proposing to do, and possibly other people, an equity and inclusion workshop for dismantling systematic exclusionary practices in sections. I submitted a proposal to have a Q&A session with IB member, international board members. So that's what I know so far about those kind of sessions. Generally speaking, the weekends, that is to say, the Friday night, Saturday, Sunday times are going to be when business is conducted. And from Monday morning is also going to be business, but Monday afternoon through Friday evening or night will be presentations that are not business presentations. Okay, registration fees. This has changed several times. It was finally decided just a couple of weeks ago that the basic registration fee, and these are going to be in dollars, $15 US. If you want to help support other people, you can do a buddy registration at 30, or a solidarity registration at 60, which would essentially support 4 people. I've been checking and the registration site is not yet live. Now, you may know that International WILPF has 3 different websites for no good reason that I can determine. There's WILPF, there's Future WILPF, and there's My WILPF. I checked all of them and none of them have live links yet. They're estimating, hoping for 350 attendees. 73 attendees will be delegates. Delegates are people who can vote. Sections are assigned delegates based on the number of members they have. And you might think it's not very equitable. I don't know. This is subject to debate. For example, if you have 10 to 50 members, you get 2 delegates. If you have 50 to, well, I'm not going to remember this exactly. It might be 200 members, you get 3. And if you have above from 300 to, it's probably not 300, it might be more than that, up to 1,500 members, you get 4. And if you have more than 1,500 members, you get 5. Nobody has more than 1,500 members. We are the biggest section. We have 1,300 to 1,400 members, so we get 4 delegates. Okay, an important thing that I haven't got any details on yet is what the online platform is going to be. And they're going to use this thing called Canopy. It is spelled Canapii. I Googled it. It's all about, let us give you a demo and maybe you want to use our platform for whatever it is you plan to do. So there's nothing more on that yet. The Secretariat is planning to schedule trainings for delegates and alternates. But I think that's all that's been said so far. There should be trainings for anybody who wants to attend, because after all, anybody who attends is going to have to know how to use it. So we have to make sure that happens. I understand that sessions will be recorded, but there's no further info on this yet. Okay. And because for a lot of people, the sessions are going to be at uncomfortable times. I find 5 a.m. pretty uncomfortable myself. You will be able to access recordings of sessions, but you're going to have to either stay up late or get up early for some of them. Okay, so it looks like there are going to be 2 sessions per day. One will be an hour and 45 seconds, an hour and 45 minutes, and the other one will be 2.5 hours. That's what it looks like to me. Okay, I already said the first session will be 9 p.m. Friday Pacific time, our time, which would be obviously midnight Eastern time. The second session is 5 a.m. Saturday Pacific time, which would be 8 a.m. Eastern time. Not so inconvenient. Now those are business sessions because those are weekend sessions. What they are saying is during the week, the time that sessions will be offered will depend on the proposals of people who are submitting those sessions, okay? This could be a little crazy. It might mean that sessions will be scheduled against each other, right? So if 2 different sets of people say propose the same time and are inflexible, well, then that's how it's going to have to be. I have a few details about the schedule. So the first day after opening and welcome, there will be new sections and groups accepted. And you may remember, maybe not, that groups don't get delegates, and they usually have less than 10 members. You have to apply to move from being a group to being a section. And the first day, those new groups will be welcomed, and the groups who have submitted the paperwork to become sections, that will be voted on. Okay. There will also be, and there are a lot of new groups who are applying to be sections, and most of these are in Africa, and this is a good thing. Voting delegates will be confirmed, and there will be reports from the International Board and from the Secretary General. On Sunday, there will be more reports. The new budget will be adopted. There will be reports by all active working groups and committees. And I know some people here are on the environmental working group, so that's when that report would happen, for example. Also, Sunday the 17th, the new international program will be presented and voted on. Now, the international program is in the last stages of development right now. I got an email today asking for, any further input, because I was somebody who sent in a lot of stuff and I participated in all the committee meetings. Okay, that's the 17th. Monday, and this is really important, the first session Monday, which might be Sunday night for us, not quite clear yet, will be the adoption of the new constitution and bylaws. It is not clear to me if they're going to put the constitution up or down, or they're going to have delegates vote on every change separately. I don't know how that's going to work. So that's Monday, the 18th, the first session, which, as I said, could be Sunday night for us. I don't know. From the second session, Monday, Australia time, through Friday are going to be the sessions that sections and committees, etc., or intersectional work, that's when those are going to be presented. And then Saturday, the 23rd, it's back to business. If you participated in the global calls, you know that one of the things we've been working on is organizational development. What does this organization need? What are the directions we need to go? What are all of the components that have to be addressed? For example, accountability is one. Another thing that has been widely requested is greater transparency. So these things are going to be a part of those discussions. We've already come to the conclusion that we, the International Board, and other people who've been working on organizational development are not yet at a place to propose, to have a complete proposal. So we'll talk about what we've come to so far and say that it's in process. Also, the 23rd, governance review. This is something we've spent a lot of time on in the global calls. And I'm not quite sure how much of that will be done. I haven't heard that discussed. There will also be presentations by young WILPF members. And Saturday is when resolutions will be presented. Sunday the last day, election of the new International Board officers, the appointment of International Board representatives, and this is really important, the appointment of standing committees. There are several standing committees. There's a Constitution Committee. There's, I'm forgetting.
Finance.
Yeah, Standing Finance Committee. There are 3 or 4 standing committees. You might want to consider if you want to be part of those. Another one is the Congress Committee for the next Congress. And there's one more, which I'm not remembering right now. Okay, so I want to say something about translations. Translations will be available if you know people who want to use translators. It'd be a good idea to let International know which languages. They already have plans for about 5 or 6 different languages, but are open to hiring more translators. Okay, another thing that happens at Congress, and I mentioned this, it's going to be happening on the second to last day, Saturday, the 23rd, and that is resolutions. Typically at Congresses, this didn't happen at the last one in Ghana, and that's the only one I've been to. But I'm told that at most Congresses, lots of resolutions are presented. And I worked on revising a resolutions document that was drafted for 2018. I've sent that to the Congress committee, and unless they change the deadlines that I thought made sense based on what their schedule is, that should come out very soon. I just want to say there are 3 kinds of resolutions you can propose. One is called omnibus resolutions. This is a combo plate, right? So this is a way of getting through resolutions quickly. You combine different suggestions or demands for whoever, depending on who the resolution is directed to. Could be directed to the UN, could be directed to governments, could be directed, somewhere else. But you would combine, 2 or 3 different things in one, omnibus resolutions. Because these are complex, they will be due first. They will be due, I don't have the document in front of me, but sometime in June. The other kind of a second kind are ad hoc. This is like an omnibus resolution that's just about one issue. Those will be due a little later, like a week and a half later, but towards the end of June. The third kind of resolution is emergency resolutions. These are for things that have just come up. in the last few days before Congress, that you didn't have time to write an ad hoc resolution about because the deadline is already passed, say. So emergency resolutions will be due the first day of Congress. Okay. And if you want to work with somebody else on an emergency resolution, you need to make sure you've got your ideas together and started to contact them, because they have to be submitted by the end of the first day of Congress. They will be, so omnibus resolutions are due June 26th, ad hoc are due July 8th, and emergency resolutions are due July 16th, the first day of Congress. You probably have questions. This is what it occurred to me what was worth talking about here. I've been asked to write an article for e-news, I think it's for e-news, about this, that will come out in June, sometime in June. And I have a deadline of Tuesday to do this. So it will be in print by mid-June.
Okay, great. Would you just take one more minute and announce the names of our delegates and alternates?
This is not, I don't have that information. I'm sure Darian does.
Okay, Darian, would you announce the names of our delegates and alternates then?
Okay, it's also in the text pad. I'm a delegate, Mary Hanson Harrison, Barbara Nielsen, Dee Murphy are delegates. Alternates are Odile Huguenot-Haber, Teresa Elamine, Ellen Thomas, and Diane Blay. That's it.
All right, well, that was a lot of information. If anyone has any pressing questions for Janet, please raise your hand. I see Nancy's got her hand up. Who else is there?
Go ahead, Nancy.
That's it.
So Janet, when we were working on the our sections proposals back, I guess, in January, there was quite a bit of discussion about how sections could better communicate and better work together on whatever issue with whatever sections. Has that come up, and is that in any way part of a program discussion?
It would be a good topic for a discussion during Congress, actually. And it might be the case that if you submitted that, it would still make it onto the schedule.
Well,
this is, there is something that has happened on the International Board recently, because several of us, mostly what we do on the International Board, as it turns out, has been governance, policies, writing and reviewing policies. But there has been a demand for political discussions. And it took until February to actually get a hearing on this. I wrote a proposal that we have meetings, regularly scheduled meetings of the International Board, where we talk about what's going on in our countries and in our regions and in the world. And that was accepted. And so we had our very first IB meeting devoted totally to discussing politics, essentially. We had that in March. Our next one is coming up in 2 weeks.
Is that open to the public, to us members?
IB meetings are not open to the public.
No, okay.
No. But if you have something you want me to take to that meeting, happy to do it. So far, because I proposed it, I suppose, I've become the point person. For sure, we're going to have a discussion on Palestine. We'll have a discussion on what's happening in Afghanistan. We'll have something on Ukraine. There's going to be something too on what does WILPF mean by feminism? Because WILPF has been late to adopt a feminist standpoint. And not everybody is clear about what that means. But I'm happy to take suggestions for further topics. Yeah, George.
Thanks a lot, Janet. I don't envy you one tiny bit. But I appreciate what you do. And given the current state of the world in those political discussions, I really hope that you can highlight the value of taking down NATO. I know that there is a statement, it may have been from US WILPF many years back, or it could have been international, making it really clear that we are not down with NATO. And there's just so many connections. You know, if NATO didn't exist, how much better off would we all be? Also a reminder, Mary Beth, that I do have an announcement I want to make before I leave. And I don't want to leave y'all, but it's getting napping, bedtime for me.
I know, I didn't expect the report from Janet to be quite as in-depth. It's information many people were interested in, but it did put us over time a lot. Why don't you make your announcement now, George?
Okay, then. Well, this is, I hope, good news for people. You know, when you're putting together okay, it's late enough that you get stream of consciousness, George. You're putting together your Zoom meeting room thing. And when I was putting together the one for this event that you all will get the first chance to register for, the only thing that fit was celebration. Now, there's not a lot to celebrate right now, and we need all the good energy we can get, especially going into the Poor People's Campaign on the 18th. You can start that out on June 5th at 3 o'clock Eastern. You are the first group of people that will see and have access to the registration link, so you can register for a celebration of the founding of the Triad branch in North Carolina a year ago, the Metro Atlanta branch in Georgia a year ago, and the Black Liberation Caucus. This is going to be a celebration, yes, and open to people outside of our WILPF membership, with the hope of attracting new members, building our branches, and building committees. To that end, our presenters will be Nancy Price from Earth Democracy, may get some more Earth Democracy people, and our own Mary Beth Gardam from Women, Money, and Democracy, so that we're strengthening ourselves, which is a great goal that we all share. I put the registration link in the chat. Please register and share with your branches, share with all the people that are in your circles in terms of where you work, play, or pray, or shop, and get people out. We will send out some promotional materials, a flyer, and Shantae from Metro Atlanta, brilliant, brilliant woman. She was describing to me, beyond my ability to, this is more than I can imagine, but I'm trying, something that she's part of online, that you can create a digital invitation thing that combines images, and you just email it to someone and then they get some kind of groovy looking invitation. We'll see what comes up and we'll pass it along. I'll put it on the branches list, or if that's not the appropriate one, to use the discussion list, but I'll make sure y'all get it. All right, I'm gonna hang out as long as I can, but when I start fading seriously, I will.
Thank you, George. Some of us haven't even had dinner yet.
Wow.
Is that June the 5th, did you say?
3rd.
Yes, ma'am. It's Sunday, June 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. Gosh, this has been an extraordinarily informative WILPF call. I'm so grateful to Rowan, who had to leave earlier, and to Emily for their help in facilitating the call. I want to make another plea that we need help planning and facilitating these calls in the future. And you can contact me if you want to volunteer. And I think that's all. It's been such a long call. I'm not even going to give you the chance to stay for a soapbox, because we've sort of had one before. So our June 1 WILPF call is being planned now, and hopefully we'll feature information about how WILPF US and International are connected, and maybe we'll get Janet Slagter back to talk a little more about the International Board. And on Thursday, July 14th, our One WILPF call will focus on our voting rights toolkit, launching it. We're all anxious to get hold of it. And the Voting Rights Solidarity Action Working Group will, I hope, help facilitate that call. So be sure you have it on your calendar. That's July 14th. If you want to help with the calls, contact me. I really hope that you all thought tonight's call was worth your time. I really appreciate you all being here. I see Janet has raised her hand. Yes,
Yeah,
Janet.
I forgot to say something. And this, I was just reading the minutes from the last international board meeting. And I haven't seen any more details about this, but May 15th is the deadline for sections to apply for the participation fund for those who can't afford $15. There's no form for it. There's no address to which to apply. I think what you have to do is contact the International Secretariat and say, how do we go about applying for this? Okay. It was something that was announced at the IB, but not, I didn't see anything being put into place to facilitate that.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good to know. It's good to know that our Congress isn't the only one that, has, gets kind of right up to the deadlines to get things done. It's a lot of work putting these on. Yeah. And we're all volunteers doing it mostly. So